Welcome back to another episode of Illuminating Information, the podcast where we shine a light on the cutting-edge ideas shaping the way we work and innovate. In our last conversation with Dr. Kirk Borne, we explored why context is the real key to making large language models useful and how agentic AI can move us beyond simply chatting with information into systems that learn and act. Today, we're taking the next step, tackling one of the hardest questions leaders face. Is AI actually delivering business value? We'll talk about why so many initiatives struggle to show ROI, where we are in the hype cycle, and of course, we'll look ahead. How multimodal AI and human AI collaboration will reshape the workplace in the next 2 to 5 years. Kirk is here again to help us separate hype from reality and chart a smarter path forward. With that, let's jump into the conversation. We've all seen the hype, but when you look at the MIT study that you mentioned that found only a few business cases showing real ROI, what's going wrong in your opinion?
Well, part of the problem is that there's a lot of work to do besides just grabbing the LLM and running with it, right? So you got to integrate it with your existing knowledge infrastructure, whatever that might be, knowledge bases, existing databases, company document repositories, whatever it might be. And of course, the LLM has this feature that you have sort of the general knowledge app that's answering questions, how to generate a sentence, answer a question, but then it's got to tap into your specific company's knowledge base or a database in order to do that correctly for you. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done there to make that work. And also the success depends upon what I would call sort of the big three issues with all of this. And I would say just data, security, and governance. Okay, so first of all, data. I mean, whether we like it or not, 10 or 15 years ago, the hype cycle was all about big data. All right. So the hype cycle has gone through, blockchain and quantum computing and AI and generative AI, ChatGPT. But we're still dealing with big data. Sorry to say. I mean, as the world didn't change. We're still producing massive amounts of data. And so you need to have quality data. Okay. Like they always say, garbage in, garbage out. Right. So maintaining quality data, which means that you're dealing with errors or missing values or incorrect values in data, knowing what is the right version of the data. So there's data issues. There's also the sort of the governance issues, right? So governance includes the sort of the ethical guardrails and guidelines of how you use this stuff, protecting privacy, access controls. I mean, who in the business should be using this, should be seeing this data. So there's all kinds of governance issues. And then, of course, security. I mean, obviously, if you start opening your company databases up to different people in the business, maybe eventually someone on the outside is going to hack into that and get all kinds of information you don't want them to have. Okay, so whatever you're doing in the modern digital world, cybersecurity has got to be part of the discussion. Okay, so companies who aren't focusing a lot of those are going to find problems with getting success out of it. There's, I think, another issue which comes along with the governance, and that's sort of monitoring. Okay, so I call it keeping an eye on the AI. So using AI to monitor the AI itself. Okay, so identifying, like if someone reports, hey, that's the wrong answer, or we have an updated version, or something like this. So keeping the human in the loop first of all, and then keeping the AI updated with that information. That goes back to what we said earlier about learning from experience, right? Those feedback loops and the adaptability is a feature of these models, but some companies maybe haven't quite stepped up to implementing that feedback loop. So there's a lot of things that can happen there, but then there's always the human issues. Okay, fear of the AI, fear of losing my job, fear of failure. Okay, so I mean, I literally remember backstory. Sorry, I love machine learning, which is the tool behind AI. And the first time I ever encountered machine learning actually was halfway through my professional career as an astronomer, because the type of math we were using was typically calculus and linear algebra and things of that sort. And I said, what is this machine learning stuff? That was like 25 years ago. So I found a book, and the first sentence in the book said, machine learning is the set of algorithms that learn from experience. And I go, what? What does that mean? The set of algorithms that learn from experience. So this goes back to the way you build a better model is you build your first model, and unless you're just incredibly lucky, it's not going to be the best model. You're just going to build the first one. So there's got to, like I'm going to build a recommender engine for my customers. The first one you build probably isn't going to be the perfect one or even the best one. So you always build with the idea that build once, find the error in it, build a second one that's modified from the first one, find the error in it, and then move in the. So now you have two models with
Mhm.
which have error, and you move in the direction. Whatever changes you made, you move in the direction that reduces error. Okay. So every good data scientist needs to make at least two mistakes before before they start making progress. Okay. And so and literally I remember in some conversations when I moved out of academia into executive consulting, some customers when I talked about fail fast to learn fast and how it's important to learn from mistakes, so then your model gets better. Like our application of AI and all this stuff gets better when you have that feedback loop. Say, this is wrong, here's how we fix it. And they got really upset. Said, no, we don't fail here. We don't make mistakes here. We don't fail here. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, I can't believe that. Second of all, you're sort of missing my point. I'm not talking about strategic failure, how your business collapses. I'm talking about these tactical failures, right? You probably heard the expression in war talk where they say you had to lose the mountain to win the battle, right? And sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. There's you have to make those choices. You don't just win every time. And so machine learning AI depends on the fact that you make a mistake and you made more than one, so you know how to not only that you need to fix it, but which direction to go. Like if I change my model and it
Mhm.
gets worse, I know that, I need to make the changes in the other direction, that kind of thing. And so companies that aren't used to this maybe can't wrap their head around it. And so they don't do the steps that are necessary for all that stuff to work well. And so part of it is sort of this cultural acceptance of fail fast to learn fast. And I think that, again, that's just normal human learning. Like every child who rides a bicycle falls and learns it, right? Every baby that learns to walk, they fall and they learn, right? And every person who learns language, you learn to say no, thank you instead of no, please, or whatever. So you learn from experience, and so I think that it's okay. And what I find interesting in going back then, talking about the failures and not failures to the MIT study. One of the findings in the MIT study, they looked at 8 different sectors, including things like healthcare and marketing and technology and whatever, a lot of different sectors. And only 2 of the 8 major sectors they researched actually are doing well with this stuff. The other 6 not. And what were the 2? One of them is media and communications, which is to me perfectly natural. These are content generation organizations. So of course, generative AI is going to help them. And the
Yeah.
other sector was, guess what? Technology sector, the very sector from which these tools are originating. So the 2 most
Interesting.
successful sectors that are using this are the ones where it's a natural part of their culture. And so the other 6 sectors, again, it's got to get to the point where it becomes more natural, and then we'll see that progress, I think.
Yeah. I think that kind of leads into our next question, which is we're clearly past the initial wow factor of ChatGPT, but where do you think we are in the hype cycle currently?
Oh, I love that question. I started giving talks with ChatGPT like 2 years ago at conferences and stuff, whatever and I would always put these hype cycle charts in my talk, and I said, okay, so 2 years ago, ChatGPT was hardly even known. And
Mhm.
I said, the next year, ChatGPT was near the top. The next year, it was just a little past the peak. And I said, where do you think we're going? We're going straight downhill after this into the trough of disillusionment. I mean, I first heard about this hype cycle long before I even knew anything about it applied to technology. I first learned about it in groups I was part of growing up in college and stuff. Okay, so people were all excited about the project, about excited about this. We're going to, do all these great things, and then after a while, not everything works out, and you sort of get this disillusionment. All right, people just they lose faith that this is going to work, that this is going to be helpful. But after a while, those who stick with it start getting to that, what they call, I guess, the slope of enlightenment. But we actually can get value out of this, and then it moves into that plateau of productivity. Okay, so I think what's interesting about ChatGPT is that I think we've sort of slid down that trough down there because over the last a couple of years, we've heard so much about hallucinations and all the errors that these chats have made, and people have lost sort of trust in it. And not
Mhm.
only that, but you're seeing a lot of people talking about in education and even in business, people, they say, They say people are just going to the chat GPT and not thinking anymore, right? They're asking the AI the question and not thinking for themselves. So there's all this disillusionment. But what my positive message is that there's a lot of different things. There's agentic AI, there's AI agents, there's RAG. I mean, it's just a new thing every other month, it seems like. And so all these things are at different places in the hype cycle, and they can sort of help move each other along, is what I'm thinking. It's not just one thing that just went up and then comes crashing down. It's all these different things. And so the ones that have already got into that plateau of productivity, they can help move the other things along. Like they can integrate ChatGPT and maybe some of these other things, and vice versa. So I think it's okay because that there is the hype cycle, because it is a very natural human reaction to things. And if it's in that negative place now, it's up to us to understand, yeah, there are challenges with this, but there's also a lot of value in this. And so let's, keep it going, as long as it's obviously not a serious mistake to keep going with it. But if it's still a good thing, we can trust we'll get out of this.
Yeah. Then going to our next question, you said in our initial conversation that multimodal AI is the missing link. Why is it so critical for human machine interaction?
All right, this is my favorite question of the day. First, I'll give a little technical answer, then I'll go off the off the reservation with my vision. So multimodal basically means it's not just one thing, right? It's not just databases. It's not just texts, document repositories, right? Document libraries. It's images, it's video, it's audio. It can be anything. Even sort of analog devices like a heart monitor, right? There's a stream of data, right? Okay, so everything, I always tell people everything is data, right? Even my face is data. I mean, I unlock my cell phone by staring at my phone, right? So it recognizes my face, which is the separation of my eyes there. So that's data. My face is data. So multimodal means it uses all different types of data as input and as output. So text to video, video to text, right? You can ask ChatGPT to make a video of something, or you can say, summarize this video for me. Okay, it's even text to data. All right, so take a document repository and extract all the data tables. Let's say I'm doing some stock market analysis. I said extract all the data about companies that are building LLMs and show me the market price over the last 2 years, all the companies, and compare them, project them. Okay, I can ask my data like questions like, what's the anomalous thing in this database? Okay, what is the outlier? What is the most interesting thing in my data? So that's multimodal. Talking to your data, having your data talk back to you, making movies, video. All right, so how does this work for me in my little world over here? I think about what we're seeing here was foretold, so to speak, foreshadowed, maybe the better word, in Star Trek episodes 60 years ago, where they're talking to the computer, So they actually are talking to the computer and getting answers to questions with the computer. And they even had this thing called the tricorder, which is non-invasive medical diagnosis, right? So they just held this little thing in front of you, which of course was silly back 60 years ago on TV, but it could sort of diagnose stuff. Well, there are actually devices that actually look at your skin color and maybe perspiration or body temperature and things like that. Maybe even can see your heartbeat based upon pulsing or something. It can actually do some kind of diagnosis without even touching you. All right. So all kinds of things that were there in the stories are now being real. And I was literally just watching an episode of this TV show called Person of Interest, which was televised 12 years ago.
I love that show.
12 years ago. The big innovation in that particular story, where they were trying to, the story, they were trying to protect somebody or whatever. But the context was these people who had this big startup, where they had a person let me take it back. What they invented was a voice-based search engine. Well, heck, we've had Siri for a number of years now, and literally not just Siri, but it's also the ChatGPT is far beyond Siri, because you can now ask it almost anything and get good. So literally, what was like, wow, look at this crazy technology 12 years ago, it's completely already normalized for all of us, including our children. So what am I getting to here? So that's multimodal, right? There's data that's on a database, and you're talking to it, and it's talking back to you, and all kinds of stuff like that. But it's multimodal with other things. It's all that other content. I go back to the big love affair with context. Okay, I love context because it tells you a lot about what's going on when someone's talking. And so I read this article last year, which just really spun my mind up. They were actually able to start understanding whale communication. Okay, so for years, we've understood that whales communicate with each other, right? So that they have a series of clicks they make. It's just so they understand there's some kind of communication going on. But what they started doing was looking at the context in which the different clicks sounds were made. So whether they were mating or feeding or being attacked or whatever. So the context helped them to understand that, oh, they are actually different sounds. All right. So yeah, they're not vowels and and consonants like in our language, but they're making different sounds. They're different clicking patterns that correspond to different contexts in which they're made. So the speculation was this could ultimately be used to communicate. Because and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that is so much like my very most favorite TED Talk, which is on YouTube, and I'm going to push it here because it's absolutely phenomenal. I first saw it maybe, I don't know, maybe even 20 years ago. But it still amazes me. It's called The Birth of a Word. The speaker is Deb Roy. So he's a scientist at MIT, I think, Deb Roy. And it's called The Birth of a Word. And he talked about how they recorded all the sounds in their house and how his son, from when he was an infant, they brought him into the house up until he was a toddler learning language, how their son learned language based upon how words were used at different parts of the house, like water in the kitchen or the bathroom, hello and goodbye at the front door. So the child learned different words, and eventually, and so they had all these recordings, and then you tell how the child was trying to create the sound, and ultimately it got the right word. So like the child learned the word water, and they had a recording of 2 years worth of, or a year and a half of the kids saying all kinds of things like wow, rah, rah, rah. And finally one day, water. It's just phenomenal. And so that's how we learn language as people, right? Our parents talk to us, say words to us, and in the context, we finally wrap it around. Oh, they're talking about food. Or your parent says, Tommy, don't touch the hot stove. You're going to burn yourself. All Tommy hears when he's little is Tommy, blah, 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 blah. Until one day he burns himself and he finally realizes, oh, that's what all that Tommy, blah, blah, blah means. It means don't touch the stove. You're going to burn yourself. And so I said, wow, let's go beyond this. What if we actually literally and truly encounter an alien civilization? Despite the movies, there's no way we're going to figure out how to talk with these people. They're not going to talk English. But it might take 2 years, it might take 20 years, but we might learn to communicate with them eventually because the sounds we make and the sounds they make, if we observe the context, how those sounds are being used and what they're talking and when they happen and where they happen, we might actually be able to build a communication. Anyway, so to me, that's truly multimodal. It's like the sound here, the facial expression you make, the context in which you're speaking, all of that stuff. That's what we're doing with multimodal AI. It's taking video and image and text and databases and streaming data like heart monitors and generating value from that. So it's not just the old days where all we had were these databases, right? You learn SQL, we learn SQL to query a database. Not everything fits in a database, but now it does because we can create these tokens and put them in a vector database. Holy smokes, we're going back in time to where we started with databases.
I like your vision of it, always thinking of the future, which goes kind of into what kinds of tasks will humans still own completely and what kinds of tasks will shift towards AI co-pilots or agents, do you think?
I think things that humans will still own are the ones where the human is acting as the guardrail. I mean, or the expert. Okay, the subject matter expert the AI can read all kinds of documents in some sense of reading, but all it's really doing is it's just generating a list of tokens that represent that document in order to feed it back to you. The statistical parrot analogy. And so the subject matter expert will understand the situation, again, the context. Don't do that in this situation, or yes, you can do that in this situation. But they also provide those ethical guardrails, like you can't do that, or that's private data, or that's a biased thing that's happening there. Okay, so that there will always be a place for that person to be there, to be the guide, the guard, to jump in when necessary. And one thing humans are really good at is identifying anomalies, identifying things that are wrong. Okay, so the chat GPT or the LLM or the RAG or whatever you're using, it can just say, here's the answer. It doesn't realize that's an anomaly. That no, that's not right. That can't be right. Okay. And so the human is really good at spotting anomalies. So we're always going to have that capability that's I still think we're going to supersede even the best AIs because it's just like there's just you and me more than you. We have years of experience. Yes, my brilliant future is behind me. Yes, but yeah, so we have those years of experience of knowing things. Okay, so humans are still valuable there, but the AI is still going to be there of great value because it can be automated. It's fast. It's efficient. All right. It's repetitive. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't ask for a raise or want a coffee break. I mean, that's, I mean, silly, but I mean, there's value in having, I mean, I actually saw this use case described. Someone said literally, you know, the business owners and people go home in the evening and they come back in the next morning and the AI has basically analyzed all the customer data and product data and market data and comes up with some recommendations first thing in the morning, waiting in the email for the decision makers when they arrive. It's all done. Oh, cool. So we're going to have this co-pilot who's helping us. I always would tell people that there's nothing artificial about AI. We call it artificial intelligence, but it's augmented intelligence. It's assisted and amplified intelligence. Okay, so it's helping us. Okay, so having that co-pilot sitting next to it, the user, who can provide that subject matter expertise and the guardrail and all that other stuff, but also have the AI to build efficiency, right? Okay, so I just want the answer to this question so I can move forward. Well, you got the answer 2 seconds later instead of me having to go figure out how to write a query to do that. So I think we're going to have this partnership as with this co-pilot just being our AI assistant, and I really like that concept of a co-pilot. They're like they're in the seat next to you.
And then last but not least, looking ahead 2 to 5 years in the future, how do you see AI shaping the digital workplace?
Well, I'm going to go back to an earlier statement, which I'm a data guy, and I always fall back on the data because that's the fundamental input here, right? So you and I, humans, cannot navigate our world if suddenly we lost our five senses, right? So if we were not able to see, hear, taste, smell, touch, if we lost all capacity with our five senses, we really couldn't navigate through our world. If you couldn't hear or read or even people who use braille with their fingers, if you couldn't touch, if you couldn't do anything, you would just be completely hopeless, right? So the data that we collect in our businesses, it is basically those sensors are the 5,000 senses like of the business, just like we have our five senses. And so we're going to find more and more value in those data. And what excites me about this is as the data sets grew larger and larger over the last several decades, what developed is sort of a problem of orphan data. Some businesses, they collect the data for maybe regulatory reasons, or they just don't want to lose all that information about customers or products or whatever, but they just can't make use of it all. So there's a lot of data that's just orphan data. It's there probably with tons of insight and value, but it's just too much. So the AI is going to move to the point where we can have basically no data left behind sort of scenario, where we can actually really start accelerating the insight and value creation of what's there and what's coming in. And there's going to be a lot more coming in. I always talk about the Internet of Things. So sensors everywhere. I mean, whether it's in transportation or in your car or in your heart or on your website, there's sensors collecting information and data everywhere. And for me, I like to call the Internet of Things, which is what people call that. I call it the Internet of Context. Again, with my favorite topic. So it's data about the environment. It's data about that thing you're analyzing. Okay, so for example, sensors in a manufacturing plant can measure the temperature, the conditions in the plant that might affect productivity or it might affect equipment failure or whatever. All this, so not just that we know that machine failed, but why did it fail? We can go back and look at sensor data, humidity data, what was the operating thing? I always talk about like, I don't know if you ever had this experience with an old car, but I remember when the engine starts knocking. Okay, there's sort of like a weird sound. The engine is not normal hum. It's more like it's like what they call it, a knocking sound. Well, what is it? There's nothing more than a different frequency that you shouldn't be hearing because something is out of whack, something is out of sync. And so all it is if you want a mathematical explanation, it's just different components in the noise spectrum of the car. Well, you can look at different components appearing in the spectrum of these sensors to identify anomalies before something fails, before your customer decides they've had enough of you because you probably didn't notice they were giving more and more negative reviews about your products or something like that. Okay, so you start seeing things faster and quicker, and they might be very subtle things. Okay, but again, you have all these sensors out there measuring product performance, customer satisfaction, market directions. I mean, all kinds of data coming into you, and now you can start tapping into that and use all of that as the internet of context. And the value of context is that now you can sort of see what's coming. All right. So it's like you're driving your car and you see children playing on the side of the road. You could see there might be a chance the child will playing with the ball might bounce in front of the car. So you better drive more slowly, be more careful. So you have this predictive intelligence, which is really extremely powerful for business. So as you measure these data from these sensors, you almost can build like a forecast model based upon the data in those sensors. So you basically can get forecasting as a service, insights as a service, value as a service, decision intelligence as a service. I mean, anyway, I can go on and on all day with this. Anyway, I think the future is going to be exciting. Definitely, it's going to also be dangerous. So I've given these talks to people, and I don't want to be Pollyanna thinking everything is going to be beautiful, and I don't want to be the naysayer saying everything is going to be awful. It's there's going to be a little of both, right? And so I saw this quote. I can't remember some famous poet or someone. I love this quote that said, "A ship is safest when it's anchored in the port, but that's not what a ship is built for." Okay, so this AI is safest if you don't deploy it, but that's not what it's built for. So be bold, take your intelligence to the edge, is how I like to say it.
I love that. That is actually very fitting. And that's all our questions for today. So thank you so much, Kirk, for joining us and giving us so much insight.
Boy, you can see I give long answers to short questions.
Be sure to subscribe to Illuminating Information on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a question, topic you would like us to cover, or know someone who would make a great guest on this podcast, reach out to us on our website and let us know. Stay innovative, stay informed, and as always, keep illuminating information.